The Birds' latest free agent departure might not seem like a big loss, but depth behind one of their rising stars has now become a major question mark. Plus, what does this all mean for Dallas Goedert as the trade bells continue to ring? Philadelphia met with yet another draft pick, adding to a very clear pattern. Thomas Mott, this is Thomas Mott Show. I thought after what seemed like every Eagles internal free agent left over the past 2 weeks that there'd be no more internal losses, but I was technically wrong as the Detroit Lions officially signed cornerback Avonte Maddox to a 1-year contract on Friday, which now brings the total number of birds in new nests in 2025 to 8, as wide receiver Campbell also signed a 1-year deal with the Dallas Cowboys late this past week. Now, obviously, Avonte Maddox and Campbell, not major losses for Philadelphia, they're gonna be just fine, but I do think the Maddox loss has some deeper meaning for another Birds, maybe key trade target. First though, let's give happy trails to Avonte Maddox. I know his 2024 campaign was definitely less than stellar, except for his 4th down pass breakup in the second half of the Super Bowl. Nice final moment in Eagles green, but we do forget there was a time when Maddox was their best nickel player. The Birds really struggled whenever he got injured, but that was his whole problem. Injuries. They really were the downfall of Avonte Maddox as he never played a full season until 2024, where he only started in 3 games, which happened to be the first 3 games of the season when Philadelphia lost to the Falcons and then got shredded by the Bucs. The latter of which was a clear indication that Maddox had to go and Cooper DeJean could begin his NFL career that culminated in him finishing as one of the best secondaries in the entire NFL and maybe the best nickel cornerback in the league. I do wonder if Adoree Jackson is going to be the backup nickel behind DeJean this season, especially if Kelee Ringo were to win the starting job on the outside, as currently on the Birds roster, they don't really have a nickel behind DeJean. Jackson does technically have some experience there, so definitely worth keeping an eye on. Little backup camp battle coming in July. Still though, back to Maddox, and I do wonder if his departure does technically have a broader meaning, as his well-documented relationship with Birds tight end Dallas Goedert was so close, in fact, throughout both of their careers. The duo actually shared a house together in New Jersey up until this time last year when Goedert finally moved into his own spot. And it was well documented last year that Maddox returned on a 1-year contract to Philadelphia because of his relationship with Dallas Goedert. And so with Maddox officially gone, I do wonder if Dallas Goedert will be next. The Birds' longest tenured tight end currently on the roster, and still a major part of the offense, is entering the final year of his contract, which has resulted in plenty of trade rumors that continue to swirl all offseason long. There have been multiple insiders from Jordan Schultz to ESPN saying the Eagles are shopping Dallas Goedert. They want something in return for the 30-year-old tight end. The problem, though, is if you trade him pre-June 1st, as I've said, you're going to eat over $11 million in dead cap money. Still, I do think you have to believe that if Philadelphia does receive an offer they can't refuse for Goedert, they would go ahead and take it because, again, he's 30 years old and has no guaranteed money left on his deal. Perhaps a day 2 or maybe day 3 draft trade after all the tight end needy teams missed out on a rookie could be in the works for the Philadelphia Eagles. And of course, replacing him couldn't be that hard, as Philadelphia could draft his replacement this NFL draft and also pair him with Grant Calcaterra and newly signed tight end Kylen Granson. But of course, it takes 2 to tango when it comes to NFL trades, and so if Philadelphia wants to draft a rookie and move on from Dallas Goedert, they have to find a trade partner and one that gives you, again, an offer that is worth eating $11 million in dead cap money. As I've said before, probably unlikely, but we'll see as we get closer to the NFL draft. I'm still hoping they can find a way to restructure Dallas Goedert for at least 1 more year on a team-friendly deal. But again, as the trade winds blow, it's not looking good for 88. Also, by the way, if you're wondering right now, how many more internal free agents do the Birds have currently unsigned after Campbell and Maddox left? Well, technically, it's 8. That includes James Bradberry, Jack Driscoll, and the likes of Britton Covey. Just FYI. Next, Philadelphia completed officially their 4th top 30 visit of the 2025 NFL draft season, bringing in yet another offensive tackle, this time Iowa State's Jalen Travis, which, if you're keeping track, this is the 4th offensive lineman they brought in for a visit, and it's the only position group that's actually come to the NovaCare complex so far. 4 visits, 4 offensive tackles. I think it's pretty clear at this point they're going to take an offensive tackle at some point in the draft, maybe not first round, probably a little bit later because Lane obviously just signed his extension. They do, though, of course, still have 26 other, internal draft visits to be held, so if you're wondering where are the rest of the position groups, they're definitely coming. And it is worth mentioning again that top 30 visits mean a lot in Howie Roseman's world, as since 2016, only 1 Eagles first-round draft pick by the Birds GM has not visited Philadelphia before the draft, and that was the bust Andre Dillard. Now, speaking of flying to Philadelphia, and that's what a lot of current Eagles officially did just a couple of days ago as they returned to the Eagles NovaCare complex this past week to complete their Super Bowl champion ring sizing, preparation for the summertime-ish ring release that will culminate in a party in Philadelphia for all to see. Definitely can't wait for that. Now, staying with the Super Bowl theme, and DeVonta Smith went on the 7 p.m. in Brooklyn podcast this past week and had a very viral clip where he echoed A.J. Brown's Instagram post about how the Super Bowl victory was not as exciting as he thought it was, and raising the trophy basically means it's time to get back to work already.
I'm gonna be real with you. I kind of agree with him.
Okay.
Because, for me, I done played at the biggest game on every stage.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think for me the Super Bowl, it felt like that just because I was at home. And like it was just the emotion of me being home. But like once we won, it was just kind of like,
Really?
Yeah. Like
let's get back to it.
Yeah, let's get back to it. Like I think if the Super Bowl was anywhere else, I wouldn't have like been emotional, and it wouldn't have seemed like it was so much for me.
Well, let's think about it, right?
I was at home.
You back home, you know what I mean? You've played.
I would say
you thinking wrong, motherfucker. Like it's back to work.
When he was saying about the DB putting his head down and stuff like that, you get a rush from something like that.
Yeah.
Like when you out there just cooking a dude, and like you can tell when he defeated and he just don't want no more. Like you get a rush from something like that, and it's just like there is no feeling better than that in the game of football.
Personally, I love this answer. Like, you don't win the Super Bowl at the age most of the Eagles are, which is very young, and just be complacent, hang it up, and be satisfied. These guys are hungry for more, and now that they've tasted the top, they want to make sure they get back there once again, and I personally like to see my top 2 wide receivers still hungry for another chip. Now, of course, besides Dallas Goedert, right now, I think the 2 main topics in Philadelphia are obviously shifting the NFL draft, who will Philadelphia take in round 1, and obviously Justin Simmons' safety spot. Is Sidney Brown going to be the guy? Well, myself and Josh Davis, during our last live stream, went ahead and hit on all 3 of those topics. Hope you guys enjoy.
Bill Schrader with a 2. Who do you think the Eagles draft in the first round? Could be lots of different guys.
It's a lot of different guys.
Safety as of today, but
we're not at the point in the draft process yet where we have kind of the top 32 ironed out. Now, the teams do, right? The teams have their boards. They obviously need to have people into Philadelphia to get their top 30 visits. That'll move you up and down the board based on how you do. But we, in as a fans or media, whatever you want to call us, I don't think we have our full boards kind of out yet. I think I have a pretty good idea of what the top 10 would look like right now if I was drafting it. But when you get late in the first round, there are plenty of players who either fall to the first round you thought would go there. Cooper DeJean's a perfect example. Philly was convinced DeJean was going to go, before they even picked last year at like 22, and then he fell all the way to 43 or 45, whatever the number was. And then there are plenty that should go in the second round that hop into the early or the late first round, right? Is it a quarterback like a Jackson Dart this year? Who knows? So there are a lot of names out there that I think are going to grow on a lot of Eagle people's minds in the coming weeks, but I think Malachi Starks and Nick Amenwari are the 2 names that are leading the clubhouse right now, because I'd be surprised if they just give the keys to Sidney Brown. They're going to let him compete, but giving the keys to him, I'd be very curious to see if that's going to be the actual game plan.
Yeah, and that the rest of the defense, or I shouldn't say the rest, but the majority, the Philly Dogs, of course, are going to have their pick with Malachi Starks. So, if he is available. But yeah, I'm curious. Do they go out and sign somebody? There's a couple options. Do you go with a Justin Simmons I mentioned, and I know that's like the talk about it all the time, and it's a regurgitation from last year and same thing. But it was a little interesting because he said at the high on his list, reunion with Vic Fangio and Christian Parker. So for some reports I remember last year, or all the way even a couple years ago, that Simmons didn't really appreciate Fangio or did not want to play with him again, confirmed by multiple people. That's an interesting statement, because if you don't really want to play with him, you don't have to say that. You could just be like, yeah, possibility, appreciated his game, Christian Parker, big fan, blah, 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 but we'll see. Like, just leave it at that. But to say high on his list, I don't know, a little bit odd, strange. Money talks, as we know. So even Myles Garrett saying he wants to compete for a championship and then say yes to his contract. So, people always go back on that if the Eagles offer enough. But then there's Julian Blackman, a couple of different guys. But I feel like there's I would say slightly greater than 50% chance that the Eagles sign a veteran safety because of the whole Justin Reed thing now. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but we did this last year though, right? Because it was this whole idea of, well, surely they're going to sign Justin Simmons, and then for like 3 weeks we said, well, Justin Simmons is in the maybe about after the draft, Justin Simmons, and then it never happened, right? And so you just think that they would do it right now, because who else are you waiting on? Especially with the Justin Reed thing falling. You're like, okay, next logical safety that's available. DeMar Hamlin's name was out there for like 15 hours, and then he signed with the Buffalo Bills. And you're like, okay, so we're, crossing off people on our list here, and not much left. So, maybe they don't like him. Although Justin Simmons went on a podcast or whatever that show was, and literally was like, I want to be an Eagle, without saying those words exactly, but he was like, the Eagles are great. I love Vic Fangio. Man, that's top of my list. You're like, goodness gracious, this guy's like begging to be an Eagle, and they still haven't signed him. So I don't know. I don't know.
besides that, shout out to Anthony. I don't know if he's still on here. So Anthony DeBono a second ago, but he had mentioned Marcus Williams with the Ravens as a potential. So like, there's another one maybe that you throw out there as a guy to go get. But there's just so much speculation. But I still just say if they were trying to get a backup or trying to get that position backfilled with CJ being traded. I just don't envision that Howie's going to, well, you know what, we couldn't get somebody, so we're going to go ahead and draft. They might just say, well, that didn't work out. Okay, now let's just see if Sidney can be the guy. But I don't know. I don't like Justin Reed. Sure, that'd been good. I would have been happy with Justin Reed. But it's also not like you miss out on Justin Reed and I say, oh, well, that was the only option. Like I go get Justin Simmons, do that, or Julian Blackmon. Be happy with that scenario. Marcus Williams, just some sort of vet. I'll just say that.
They still at least have the luxury, Josh, before we get to these super chats, of they've seen Sidney Brown. Vic Fangio has seen Sidney Brown, and they know what they have in him. And so if Vic Fangio gives you the sign-off based on his track record of this past season with Zach Bond, then Sidney Brown's the guy, and you have the next Brian Dawkins, right? I mean, I don't know. But they at least have in-house guys that they clearly feel very, very confident in. Maybe Sidney Brown's one of them.
Yeah. I mean, we're still high on him. We talked about him for a number of times, but he's got the tools. The tools in his body is how he would say. Can he play in Fangio's system and play well? Brandon, what's up? Happy birthday to your son, Ian. 14th birthday.
Hey, okay. Happy birthday,
March
Ian.
26th. That's a little early, but yeah, he's asked if we get a shout out for a birthday. Happy birthday. Happy early birthday.
There you go. What does he want? Hopefully it's Eagles gear, right? Come on.
Surely. I mean, that's
all I wanted at 14.
Right answer.
Yeah. That's all I still want, honestly. So.
Just keep on stockpiling it. That's what happens. David with a 5. Ronnie Gadsden out of Syracuse is a strong tight end replacement. Go Birds. There's a name to keep an eye on.
There's like 7 tight ends in this year's draft. That could make sense. There's probably like 4 to 3 like really good ones. There's probably 7 that you could go, here's day 1 guy, a day 2 guy, a day 3 guy. One of them is going to be an Eagle. That feels very clear. Although I was educated by Anthony DeBona today, as I usually am because I follow him on Twitter. I thought that they would try and trade Goddard sooner rather than later. They trade Goddard pre-June 1st, Josh. It's like an $11 million cap hit. If it's post-June 1st, it's 5.2. So
yes.
I thought a Goddard trade, if they were going to do it, was like any day now. And now clearly it is probably going to be delayed if they're going to do it, which probably means they're just going to extend him to something a little more team-friendly.
Yeah, try to shuffle the money around, make a cap hit make sense and everything. So makes sense. That's where I would figure as well. Josh H with a 5. All of the criticism that Philly is getting is almost identical to the criticism of the Chiefs the past couple seasons. It does feel similar in a sense. I mean, the Super Bowl win, you come off of that, people are ready to see you get knocked down, like, oh, you're losing these guys, or are you going to be able to get back to that same level? I could see it from that side. It's not identical. I said almost identical, but it's fair.
I mean,
for a champion.
You can't, at least we're not, having everyone complain about the refs giving us games, right? That's probably the one big difference there in terms of us and the Chiefs. But, sure, that's fine.
We've got the tush push. People complain about that, not the refs necessarily, but the tush push.
True.
Jordan Torres with a 5. Didn't we say last year if the defense was above average, we still win a ton of games because of the offense's potential? Doesn't that still apply now?
Yes, I literally thought about this earlier when Josh was saying if we have a top 10 defense, and I forgot to say it. All we said, I think I'm on camera like 10 times at this time last year saying, as long as it's a top 15 defense, this team's going to be nuts. And then it was like the number 1 defense, and they were, obliterating people. So 100%. If the Eagles have the 11th best defense in the National Football League in 2025, they're likely playing in an NFC Championship game, if not playing in a Super Bowl. If they have the 6th best defense in the league in 2025, it's going to look very similar to what it was this past season. Yeah. Maybe even a little better because everybody's in year 2 of a Fangio system. So, yes, 100%. The 8th best defense, the 12th best defense, anything 15 and up, and Philadelphia's sitting pretty good because the offense is going to be really, 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 really good. Yeah, and it goes without saying, obviously, but you repeat this year, number 1 defense, and you get a blowout in the Super Bowl again. So, yeah. AJ with a 2. Simply tell Carter to say no to any team. I mean, one way to do it. Like 31 other teams, I guess. So
it doesn't really. It's not legit. I'd love to think it's not actually a possibility of him having it. Right? He's getting money, getting paid as well. There's a big difference between where you get drafted. Shaq with a 10. What do you guys actually think of Starks? A buddy of mine that's followed Starks since Jefferson High School always tells me that he's never been consistent in coverage and has trouble with the fast guys.
Yeah, coverage a little bit, but he's kind of supposed to be in the C.J. Gardner-Johnson mold of being a cover guy, because all safeties must cover, but he also has to get into the box and hit people and make open field tackles. And Gardner-Johnson he was always good at that. He kind of struggled a little bit, but then last part of the season, he was fantastic in the open field. All the Eagles got much better at tackling. So I think that's what you're more looking at from Malachi Starks. And I live in Atlanta, so all my friends went to UGA. All of them rave about Malachi Starks. They love the guy. They think he's just like the best safety to come out of the draft in a very long time, which, there's pretty good safeties that came out of the draft, but they all think he's fantastic. So I'm all for it. We give the seal of approval for a Malachi Starks to Philadelphia, especially at 32.
Yeah, and it will be interesting too, because Anthony, again, shout out to Anthony DeBona, because he's on top of just about everything, but he knows pictures and photos of Eagle scouts and who they're looking at and everything else there.
Right.
But he mentioned or brought up a great point, the fact that Malachi Starks, how he tested at the combine. Keep an eye out for the draft situation of would he potentially fall, because athleticism-wise, it was not quite where he was wanting.
Yeah.
Again, doesn't always lead up to that, but could be an opportunity where, he's still available, as we were talking about earlier, 27, you trade up, you go get him. But I'm with you, not as much of a concern from that side.
Now, obviously, we have plenty of stuff happening the next couple of days and weeks. I'm going to be traveling early this coming week. I'll bring my gear in case something happens, but might be out for a couple of days, so be sure to go ahead and watch this video, drop a like, and subscribe. Plenty more giveaways happening soon as well. Thomas Mott, this has been the Thomas Mott Show.